Hi, I'm Professor Yoav Shoham, and I'm speaking about the state of AI in general and natural language processing in particular.
What I want to do is kind of focus a little bit on what AI is and what to look for when we speak about AI. So if you go to any conference on AI, you'll see many, many areas. And I'm not going to go over them. But really what's happened in the last decade is that machine learning has taken over AI. Machine learning was always there, but didn't play, it wasn't the driving force it is today. And today, it's got so dominant that people often conflate machine learning with AI, and sometimes even more specifically, an area of machine learning called deep learning or deep neural nets or simply neural nets. And so maybe let's pause for a second and speak about what that means. So machine learning, again, is a broad area, but basically it consists of feeding the machine data and have it detect various patterns. So it could be you give it customer data and outcome the segmentation of customers, or you give it a, set of customer candidate resumes, and you get either classification of them to appropriate job descriptions or level expertise or what have you. What you've seen in the last decade was that the focus was on machine vision. And this is a slide that kind of tells two stories. I apologize for the low quality of the image, but I'll speak over it. This is taken from something called the AI Index that comes out of Stanford. It's something I started about 4 years ago, and it covers goings on in AI in a quantitative way. There's an annual report that comes out, and the latest one just came out about two months ago. And you have hundreds of charts like this, and this chart tells an interesting story. In fact, like I said, two stories. First of all, the hoopla you see around AI today is not the first time you've seen this hoopla. Back in the 80s, it was similar. And this is a graph that looks at attendance at large AI conferences. This kind of large conference meaning, usually 1,000 people and more. And you see that back in the 80s, it was standing room only and, sold out and so on. And then came a period where even if you were doing AI, you weren't allowed to admit it. And now it's, of course, all back in the news. So that's one, this U-shaped curve typifies a little bit the history of AI. But it also tells another story. And again, it's hard for you to read, but for example, the purple and blue lines here are the two large general purpose conferences, one called AAAI, standing for the Association for Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, and the other is the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence, or HCI. And they cover all those areas, those blocks that I showed you earlier. All of them are represented in those conferences. And while it might seem like they've waned, in fact, there are thousands of people who come to those, very popular. But what's happened is that the yellow conference, NIPS, it's actually been renamed called NeurIPS, Neural Information Processing System, which is really one of the, or maybe the premier machine learning conference, has just, the attendance has shot through the roof. And for example, the green one, the International Conference on Machine Learning, is another major machine learning conference. This is also kind of hockey sticking there. And even in between them, something called CVPR, computer vision something, it would seem that that's lots of learning, but actually that brings us to the kind of the continuation of the story, is that that machine vision, which refers to the ability of the computer to take in an image or maybe even video and make sense of it, has been dominated by machine learning. So in fact, the papers in machine vision are almost entirely based on machine learning. And the last decade really has been the era of machine learning applied to computer vision. Um, what's happening now, and this is the last really 3 years, is that natural language has come to the fore. Suddenly, there are major advances here, and we'll speak about that. And they are all powered by the explosion of machine learning, and in particular, deep learning. So let's speak again just a little bit about deep learning and what that means. So there are various forms of machine learning. Deep learning or neural nets refer to the original, this is a very old technology, going back to the really 70s, if not earlier. And it started by trying to architect a system that mimics in a very crude way the brain is wired. So you have these processing units, these nodes, and are connected between them by something that looks like synapses in the brain. Again, a very crude approximation of what actually goes on. But then what happens is you feed it input, and based on the output it produces, you feed back into the network and you adjust the weights of these connections between the nodes, somewhat like, this changes in synaptic ties. And so it's called backpropagation, and an old technique which really was poo-pooed. And what really changed was not so much that the techniques have evolved, and they have evolved, but mostly that suddenly we have unimaginable data to work with and insane compute power, things that we could not even imagine 20 years ago. And that has made all the difference. And when we speak about the difference, we're speaking about deep language models. And this is the most buzzwordy slide I have, so bear with me here. But what a deep language model is, it's a neural net that takes in text. And when I say text, I mean everything that's ever been written. The whole internet is just the beginning. So it's just a really unimaginable amount of text that come into these networks. And when you think networks, don't think about a network you can draw on a blackboard or something. For example, the biggest network that was advertised is GPT-3 out of OpenAI, and it has 180 billion parameters. It's just hard to kind of conceive of. And I can tell you, because we've been training such networks, they take many months and many millions of dollars to train. So those are deep language models, and what they do is it's very surprising. They get at not only linguistic structure but world knowledge that is embodied. Imagine that if you could understand everything that was written, even just Wikipedia, you'd learn not only about how to, what language looks like, you'd learn a lot of facts. And so these are what these deep language models are. And then what happened, you applied them to various tasks and they actually move the needles in a dramatic way. And we divide natural language into kind of generally two parts: the understanding and the generation side. The understanding meaning, give me text and I'll make some sense out of it. Sense could be, I could classify it, I can tell you whether the sentiment is good or bad, I'd show some understanding of it. And generation is, I'll kind of write automatically or semi-automatically for you. And in both cases, what's happened is nothing short of amazing. So let's speak about understanding, for example. By the way, I just want to remind you that I can't see you. So if anybody wants to stop me and either make a comment or ask a question, find a way of making yourself noticed. So speaking about understanding, this, by the way, again, is data taken from the AI Index. If you're interested, you can go to aiindex.org and look at a ton of data. This is one of the data set called SQUAD, the Stanford Question Answering data set, and never mind exactly what it is, but broadly speaking, you give it a paragraph and ask it a question and need to look at the paragraph and tell you herein lies the answer. And the red line is human level performance as demonstrated by sort of human kind of guinea pigs. And what you see is that the initial systems back in sort of 2015 did, were really barely better than chance, but improvement was rapid. And by 2017, certainly 18, systems had caught up with human level performance. There are many, many similar stories with other data sets. So it's really, really impressive. And it was all based on deep neural nets. So nothing I say should be interpreted as poo-pooing the achievements, because they are really dramatic. However, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we kind of project our best hopes and our worst fears onto these systems. And if you take a sentence that any 5-year-old understands, such as this one, you can read it. Danny hit me at school, so I hit him back, but the teacher only saw me hitting him, so she punished me. It's not fair. This is really something that any kid understands. And no machine can come close to making sense of it in any sense of making sense. And when you think about it intuitively, how do we understand it? Well, we understand there's a timeline, and there are events in time, and they're connected not only temporally, but also causally. And there are agents or people out there with mental state. In particular, they have beliefs, and they have beliefs about other people's beliefs, and their emotions. And all these abstractions are things that to us are very intuitive and are anything but intuitive to the machine. And it comes down to semantics. And that's one kind of thing to keep in mind. These are, sometimes they're called statistical parrots. I'll just finish the sentence, and then if somebody, just 1 second. And so they're amazing statistical machines, but they're weak in semantics. So if somebody left their mic on by mistake, please close it, and otherwise I'm all ears.
No, it's me. It's Olivia. We have 2 questions in the chat. Or one was, what does SQUAD stand for in your previous slide?
It's acronym for the Stanford Question Answering Dataset, and it consists of a whole bunch of paragraphs and questions and spans in the text in which the answer to the question lies. And the challenge to any algorithm or any language model is to predict the answers well. And that was the competition.
Got it. And then another question from Andrea. I don't know if you want to jump in, Andrea, but she asked, how is the answer, quote unquote, confirmed to be correct with regard to what was intended?
An excellent question. In general, it's a very open question, and it comes down to human annotators, human judges that certify what is the right answer. In the question of SQUAD specifically, the answer consists of a span in the text. And here, definitely, it was human annotators that went over those thousands of paragraphs and questions and answers and said, this is the correct answer.
Hi, it's Andrea. Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Definitely.
Cool. So it sort of feels like, 75 years ago when the IQ tests were done by white men, and that's how we figured out what it means to be smart. I'm being a little informal here. So if you've got a whole team of folks who tell the machine, yep, that's right. Yes, that's how we would say it. Yes, that's what we mean. The we is a question. Who's the we, and do you have any insights on long-term implications for how humanity gets redefined through AI by a small subset of that humanity? And if not, that's cool. That's a whole nother webinar.
No, this is a very good question. And it's a topic of a lot of focus in AI these days. Issues of fairness, of ethics, of bias. It's not, by the way, confined to language. In machine vision, the issue of misclassification of faces based, for example, on race is a big issue. And so it's really an important question. Now, in the case of sort of question answering and squad, there's not so much room for subjectivity. The agreement between annotators, if there's disagreement, it tends to be not based on culture or other social kind of things, more on just kind of human judgment. So it's less of an issue in the case of question answering. But in other cases, it's hugely important. And I was going to get to it later on when we covered a little more ground. But so it's not only the human annotators that are important here, it's also the data on which you train. Now, it's true that you train on so much data that you cover a lot of ground. But then you go to apply it in specific areas, and maybe there you have a huge, sort of blind spot. And it can be fairly innocuous. For example, you've trained on general purpose corpus, huge, but it doesn't know as much about medicine if you focus just on medical journals and so on. So it wouldn't give you very expert answers on medical questions. But more or less innocuous are questions that have to do with, that have societal implications, maybe loan applications or use by law enforcement, authorities. And if you happen, for example, say you're trying to pick up on language that people use on social media and detect signs of threat, this is very prone to sort of linguistic idioms and norms and so on. And so super important, and we can maybe circle back to it later on if we want and speak about how to mitigate it. But I'll actually kind of spill the beans. Part of it is technological, and part of it, you need a human in the loop. I'll say this right away.
And Yoav, we have one more question.
But it's okay, let's continue,
Jack.
And we can again get.
Yoav, we have one more question from Jack. On this slide, if the compound sentence was broken up into simpler sentences, would the machine still understand the paragraph?
It potentially would understand it better, because understanding long compound sentences is one of the. So the reason vision was impacted by neural nets before language is because vision is easier. I say this in parentheses because vision is a lot of things, but the problem of object recognition is relatively simple. You have something fairly local, and you need the machine to, detect the cat, whatever. Language is compositional, and you have complicated long-distance relationships, and the way you alluded. So if machine vision is a lens into the eye, natural language is a lens into the mind. It's much harder. So yeah, breaking up sentences, complicated ones and shorter ones, on the one hand, could introduce problems because you potentially lose the connection between the parts. On the other hand, it can also make things easier. Complicated answer to a very good question. Olivia, should I go on?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So that's our grain of salt. When we look at generation, it's a similar story. This is the way GPT, this is actually from GPT-2, not GPT-3. So OpenAI is one of the organizations alongside Google and Facebook and yes, and AI21 Labs that are producing very large, innovative language models. And GPT-3 was, so GPT-2 made a lot of noise because it was then the biggest language model with 1.5 billion parameters. And it could do things like this. You'd give it a first sentence: artificial intelligence, the art and science of enabling machines to exhibit the sort of intelligence some people exhibit. This is a sentence I wrote. And then it would continue to tell you a very coherent story. With the advent of robotics and or AI, it's possible to create objects that are so intelligent and so on. I won't read it all. but it makes sense all the way to the end. And does this mean, what does this mean for the way we think about humanity? It's mind-boggling that a machine could write this. But the truth is that this is the exception to the rule. This is a more typical experience. Text generation technologies today show great signs of progress as evidenced by GPT-2, Grover, and Haim. Haim is actually one of the models that we created at AI 21 Labs. And it started to speak almost, it almost makes sense to speak about both of these technologies. That's three, but never mind. These models don't count well, by the way. But it kind of makes sense, but then it goes off the rail and speak about GPT standing from good parts in front of parts and who knows what else. And so this hallucination is much more typical of what you'd get in natural language generation systems. And it's widely recognized. These are some quotes, but I won't read them, but by people who actually know the stuff, both by reporters and some of my colleagues in academia. And basically, the statistical machines have no idea what they're saying, and therefore they say nonsense a lot of the time. And so, if I were to net it out, where we stand in natural language today is, first I want to emphasize the first bullet, because it might seem that, again, that I'm throwing cold water on things that, I wouldn't be in the business I am if I weren't enthusiastic. So there's really amazing progress, and we can do things today that were unimaginable even 5 years ago. But there are significant shortcomings. The system makes up stuff because it read it someplace in the internet that's unrelated to anything that's actually on the page now. There are issues of bias and fairness that we discussed. There are whole issues that we must be aware of and come both enthusiastic but cautious. And I know of two ways to try to mitigate the shortcomings. And the one I mentioned was that I have not seen any successful application of AI, including of deep learning, where people weren't deeply involved in the process, from cleaning the data, selecting the data well, if it's human annotators, making sure the annotation is done well, looking at the output, improving the outputs, and re-ranking, pruning it, and so on. And certainly in WordTune, that we'll discuss in a moment, that's the case. So that's one part. And the other part is improving technology. And what I mean by this is the following. And again, if you look at those historical charts that I alluded to earlier, back in the 80s, where there was a lot of excitement, as there is today, the discussion was very different. We didn't have a lot of data. We didn't have a lot of compute power. But what we had was very rich semantics. KR stands for knowledge representation. And all those things of modeling time and causation and knowledge and belief, that's what AI did at the time. We pivoted to the mirror image, where we basically have the amazing statistical machines with data and compute power that are unthinkable with zero semantics. And so we detect patterns very impressively. But the next step is to really fuse the two. And that's where not only I believe that AI is going, by taking these deep neural nets and beginning to imbue them with knowledge presentation and reasoning capabilities. And that's also what we do at AI 21 Labs. Yeah. Olivia, you want to speak?
Just launched the other poll. This is just to see who's interested in really getting more materials from our end that we could potentially share with Chris to share with you all about diving deeper into the AI side. It's looking like large majority, definitely yes. Give it a couple more seconds. All right. There we go. Sharing the results now. All right, great. Well, we can definitely follow up with some materials that Yoav can share with me to share with Chris. And again, we're always available to answer any questions after this as well.
All right. So I'll continue here. And
Can
oh, yeah.
Can I bother you with a question? Because I just noticed that there was another person with the same question. In the previous slide, you said something about data and then semantics. And then I thought it was an idiotic question, but I couldn't figure out what semantics meant. And then I realized that there is another colleague who doesn't either. So I felt a little bit better to ask you. What do you mean by semantics?
Thank you. And I'm so glad you bring it up, because whenever we hear a talk, and it's true for me always, we don't understand something that was said that the speaker took for granted, and we feel like, oh, we're the only one, and it's never the case. So really thank you. And if there are other, please speak up. We just distinguish between syntax and semantics. There's also another thing called pragmatics. But syntax is the form of the language. What makes for a well-formed sentence, and whether it's, you know what I'm saying. It's not only spelling, but also the grammar right, and and so on. Semantics is meaning. What does a sentence mean? And in language, there's a very rich tradition of taking a surface language and giving some other representation that says, well, this is what it really means. I ate a cake. So I is some entity, maybe a human. Ate is an action that involves a person and some kind of food stuff. And a cake is a type of food, and so on. So that's semantics. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right. So,
Question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have another definition for artificial intelligence is intelligence demonstrated by a machine. Is that correct answer?
It's one of the correct answers. You'll get different definition from different people.
Oh,
Historically, when AI started out, the term artificial intelligence was coined by John McCarthy, who was my senior colleague at Stanford, passed away a couple of years ago. And when it started out back in the 50s, it really was sort of a yin and a yang. On the one hand, it was trying to get machines that when human did them were considered to be intelligent, like playing chess or recognizing an image. And the other side was trying to understand human intelligence by creating computer models of it. Today, AI is mostly the first kind. The more cognitive science side of things has really diverged into its own discipline. And so yes, it's the attempt to get machines to do stuff that when humans do them, we consider that intelligent. And that's a moving target. It used to be the case that recognizing the digits, just imagine just recognizing license plate numbers. That was an AI problem. Today, it's just commodity. And so, but yeah, so what is considered intelligent is subjective. But once you fix that, that is what AI is. We good? All right. Keep stopping me. I mean, that's what we're here for. But I remember I can't see the chat, so somebody needs to tell me. All right, so what we do at AI21 Labs is really, not good for a company whose mission is to write well, right? So let's fix this. There, no spelling mistake. So we're creating all this deep technology, and you can do lots of stuff with it. What we want to do it is to reinvent how we write and how we read. And that may sound like, may sound frankly weird, but when you think about it, how do we do that today? So the way we write today is the way somebody at Microsoft, a project manager at Microsoft, decided in the 1980s. And that's certainly true if you're using Microsoft Word or Outlook, but it's also true if you're using Google Docs or Gmail. it's the same sort of experience, a way of formatting text and printing it and searching in it and doing word count. It really hasn't changed in any fundamental way. And when you think about how we read today, it's even weirder. It's kind of the way the Gutenberg, just, when they invented the printing press in the 15th century, somebody put it on a paper or screen in our case, and we read it. And there's really an opportunity to rethink both of these experiences. And adding AI not as an afterthought, not as, oh, by the way, let's do better spell correction or whatever with AI, but really think from the ground up, what does it mean for AI to be there and really be a partner, a thought partner, not just a menial assistant doing little stuff, but really helping you think through the text, whether you're writing or reading, and be there at your side. And that's what WordTune is. And I think I'm going to stop presenting and let
Question now. So I can tell about my experience, what I did with HTML using my artificial intelligence by doing more websites.
I'm sorry, Shivang, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat it?
No, I'm not telling the question. So I have an experience about understanding artificial intelligence and I used it. Excuse me?
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I think my connection maybe isn't great, but I'm afraid I didn't totally understand. Please help me again.
I've used my I've used my artificial intelligence when I created websites in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and PHP.
You say you are using it now?
I'm using it doing website development, artificial intelligence.
In which way are you using it? Tell us. How is
So
AI helping you when? Yeah.
when I do the design of styling the website and using the font and width for the website, which makes it nice with the background image.
And are you using Wix or WordPress or what are you using?
We're using I'm doing the course right now, so I'm doing VS Code.
Right, and the question is what AI are you using? So it's by the way, it's something we can really discuss. Maybe offline would be good because it so happens that one of our partnerships and use cases is exactly helping people like yourself who are building websites or blogging online or creating online content, improve the way they the content, not the layout, not the graphics, but the actual copy. But actually, this is a really good segue to speak about WordTune. So let's do this, and maybe at the end there'll be an opportunity to see how well that dovetailed with your and everybody else's kind of needs. So Olivia, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia. I head up partnerships at AI21 Labs. Thank you, Yoav. That was wonderful. All right, I'm going to just do a really quick overview of our two tools, which Chris is a big fan of, as she mentioned at the beginning. She has been a super user of WordTune Write for the past, 4 or 5 months, and a beta user of our newest product, WordTune Read, which I'm also going to tell you about shortly. So, all right, so what is this WordTune you have been hearing about? So we all know that products like Grammarly and other grammar correction tools exist, and they're great, but they're very, very simplistic in what they do. They focus on grammar corrections and spelling errors, and what WordTune is trying to do is to really be a far more comprehensive tool. We do those things as well. We do grammar and spelling fixes, but what we're really great at is understanding what you're trying to say and helping you express yourself even better. We are a true writing companion, whether you're writing a post for LinkedIn, an internal report for your team, a article for a newsletter or for a blog, or anything in between. And because it's powered by this deep AI technology that Yoav has just been speaking about, all of our results that we give you in the ways that we can help you rephrase sentences are really dynamic, meaning you rephrase one of the sentences using WordTune, and 5 seconds later, you click our rewrite button again, and we'll give you 10 different ways to rephrase the same sentence. And what it really does well is it preserves the original meaning of the sentence. And it works anywhere you write on the web, from Gmail to Google Docs to Outlook for Web, Slack, etc. So let's dive into a couple of the core features. So just for background, what WordTune is, we're a Google Chrome extension. We do have a standalone editor, which I'll talk about briefly, but our main use case is on Google Chrome. We have about 100,000 users right now. And so what you do is you'd go to our website, you'd add the WordTune Chrome extension, and then you can start using us anywhere you write. And so how WordTune works is you highlight a sentence, and our main feature is rewrite. And rewrite allows you to rephrase that sentence in 10, 15 different ways, again, while preserving the original meaning of the sentence, because our technology understands context and semantics. Other features we have, we can shorten and lengthen sentences based on the format or type of content that you're creating. If you want to create a tweet, you can shorten. If you're trying to hit a specific character or word count and you don't have a lot to say, you can lengthen. We have a tone feature that actually allows you to change from formal to casual. So if you really are writing to maybe a superior or a company-wide email and you wanted it to sound a little bit more professional, you can make it more formal. If you want it to sound a little more casual, you can choose the casual option. One of our coolest new features that we just rolled out is multilingual rewrite, which is rewrite, that same feature I just talked about, for any language. We literally support every single language, from Chinese to Spanish to Hebrew and Arabic and everything in between. And so how this works is you write a sentence in your native language or a combination of multiple different languages and English. You click rewrite and you get rephrases of that sentence, translations of that sentence into English. And we know if any of you are non-native speakers or learning a new language like I am, I use Google Translate all the time, and it's incredibly simplistic. It gives me one option. But with our multilingual rewrite, you get countless different ways of saying that sentence in English. And then again, as I mentioned, as a baseline, we have corrections, which are simple spelling and grammar fixes that any of the other tools out there have. We do have a standalone editor, which I briefly touched on, and this works across browsers. So you could use it on Firefox, Safari, and any other browser that you use if you don't want to use our Chrome extension. So use cases, we were thinking through different HR specific use cases, and we've actually been seeing a lot of adoption in the HR world. And this is what we've heard from some of our users, is that they're using WordTune to optimize their recruiting ads on LinkedIn and Facebook, to make sure that their job descriptions on their website read really well, to polish all of the communication with prospective recruits. You guys are communicating all day, I'm sure, with prospective hires. So just adding a layer of polish to all of your communications, using WordTune to actually coach your teams on how to effectively communicate and write better communications with potential recruits or internal as well, to up-level performance reviews. I know those dreaded performance reviews can take forever. WordTune is a great way to diversify your writing and actually get creative ideas for how to rephrase different sentences. And then diversity and inclusion. This is a really, really big one. WordTune is being used across the globe by non-native English speakers, both personally and professionally. And this tool is a really great way to help the people in your company who may not be native English speakers to feel like they can up-level all of their written English communications. And then other use cases across the board that aren't specific to HR. We've had a lot of interest from companies who have virtual assistants, whether it's on the computer in the car, who want to make their virtual assistants sound more human. So they want to use WordTune to diversify the language that the virtual assistant uses. Probably our biggest use case are in marketing and sales teams. We have sales teams, SDR teams, using it for outreach emails and engagement emails. We have marketing teams using it for pitch decks, product marketing, training, collateral, one-pages, blog posts, tweets, video scripts, and so much more. We have content marketers who are using it, hundreds of times a day just to keep their content fresh, because that's their full-time job. And we're really seeing use cases run the gamut. We also have a huge cohort of engaged users in the academic space. We have third grade teachers using WordTune as a teaching tool. And we have graduate professors like Chris, who's also using it with her students and evangelizing it in her classroom. Quick time for a poll. Oh.
Olivia, can I ask a couple of questions that were in the chat?
Please.
Okay, so let's see. The first question, I think you already answered, and it was if it works on Safari and iOS.
So our WordTune editor does work on Safari and iOS, but our Chrome extension is just for Chrome. But the editor has all of the same features. It has feature parity with Google Chrome, and it just came out a few weeks ago.
Gotcha. Okay, the next one is, can the system rewrite something to be gender neutral?
That is a great question. We don't have that capability right now, but that is a great idea for a feature. And our team, we have 30 plus engineers working on rolling out new features on a weekly basis. And we love some of our best ideas for features we actually get from our users. So we would love to hear more ideas like that. You can always write to me. My email is oliviag@ai21.com. I'll put it in the chat. Feel free to write to me with any ideas you have for features. And a lot of them actually get built and are launched into our product.
And then the third question actually made me chuckle here. It says, Tony asks, does this use GPT-2/3, so can hallucinate and be biased?
So our version doesn't. We have built our own proprietary models, but we learned a lot from GPT-2 and GPT-3. Yoav, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Right. So first of all, like Olivia said, we had used GPT-3, but we have superior models, so we're using those. Part of the way they're superior is the various filters and re-rankings we have on top of them. So there's much less room for hallucination, and we have very extensive what we call toxicity filters. So far we haven't seen anything bad happen through the use of the system. We're continuously kind of vigilant here, but so far so good.
And I would say, as a super user, I use it a lot. I have not seen any hallucinations. And the other thing is you have several options. So if it did hallucinate, I would just pick the non-hallucinating option. But to be honest, I have not seen any hallucinations in my uses so far.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for responding to the poll. So it looks like it's the top one is for recruitment, ads, and communication with hires. And then we have diversity and inclusion tools second, and coaching tool for existing employees. Awesome.
And by the way, the spelling mistakes were mine and not using WordTune when I passed this on to the poll.
Oh,
Just
good.
say sorry.
All good. And this, just quickly over, you can see these are sort of use cases from around the world. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, but like I said, from PhD students in Missouri, stop sharing, to journalists in Korea and everyone in between. All right, so by the numbers, just some quick overview of our numbers. To date, we've actually had over 6 million rewrites. Again, we only launched 6 months ago, so we're a very, very new tool. And over 6 million rewrites to date, with around over 100,000 daily rewrites. And our top % of users are super users like Chris, use rewrite at least 71 times a day. Chris, I'd actually love for you to do a tally one day and figure out exactly how many times you're using rewrite, see if it's more or less than our 10% average. And the reported time savings from our users is 2 to 4 times that they're saving every single day that they're using our WordTune features to help them write. All right, now quick overview of our latest product, WordTune Read, which I mentioned Chris is a beta tester for. This is in our alpha version. We just launched it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what WordTune Read is, it allows you, it's a standalone product on the web. It's not just on Chrome, it's across the web. It allows you to either upload a PDF or put in a URL of an article, be it from the New York Times or anywhere else. And what it does, it's a summarization tool. So as you can see, this is an article that I pulled from JP Morgan, how COVID-19 has transformed consumer spending habits. It was a URL, it's live on JP Morgan's site. I pulled it in, and what it does is it pulls out on the right, you can see these summaries. And the summaries are one-line overviews of these chunks of text. So if I'm in a rush, I have to read a bunch of articles or a bunch of PDFs, and I really don't have the time, I can put it into WordTune Read. I can scroll down the right, I can see all of the summaries, which are the key extracts and seminal points from the piece. And hopefully by the end, I'll have a really great understanding of what that piece was trying to say. And as you scroll, you can also see the blue highlighted lines. If you want an even deeper understanding, but again, still don't have time to read through everything, you can just read through all of the blue highlights, which again are the key sentences from each chunk of text. We're really excited about this, and we're just rolling it out to the world, so you should absolutely try it out if you're interested. And quick recap. So just went over really quickly AI21's 2 products, WordTune Write, which helps you save time, streamline your workflow, whether you're in HR, marketing, or anything in between. Polish your correspondence and express yourself more clearly by getting new creative ideas to diversify your writing. And WordTune Read, our latest product that also helps you save time, focus on relevant text if you have a ton of reading to do, and really helps you digest and comprehend the key points in a much quicker timeline. So both of these products are available now. You can check them out on our website, wordtune.com. Yoav and I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. Oh, I have one more poll actually. Let's do it really quickly. All right, yeah, I would love to understand from you guys, outside of the HR use cases, where you think your employees could actually benefit the most from specifically WordTune we're talking about in this case. Give a couple more seconds.
Olivia, there's a question on the chat about the ability to read legislative bill language.
Yeah,
that's a great question.
That's a good one. So there's several vertical domains: legislative, financial, medical, and the experience we have so far is that out the chute you get pretty good performance, and then we need to fine tune it to really get extra performance in a certain domain. And what we're doing, we're collecting, because there's so many areas where we could do fine tuning, we're looking to see where the demand is and produce certain modules that will be optimized for certain verticals. For example, finance, for example, legislature, there are various various verticals. So it'll be very interesting to see. This is a brand new product, and it will be interesting to see where the demand is for specialization.
Great. So I'd love to open it up to any other questions. I know you all have been a really engaged, amazing audience, but if there are any final questions for either Yoav or myself, we'd love to answer them. And here on the screen, you can see is the activity number that you can take down to get credit for joining today.
I have a question, if Professor Shoham doesn't mind. My question is, there's a lot of talk about the professions that are going to weaken or disappear because of AI. Do you have any input on that or any predictions?
In Hebrew, there's a saying that prophecy was given to the fools. I really feel humble here. A lot has been written about it. According to a McKinsey report of about a year ago, something like 500 million jobs will disappear. I don't know, for example, take self-driving cars. There were predictions that there are, I think, 2 million truck drivers in the US alone, or something like that, that they're all going to lose their job. That hasn't happened. There's no question that automation is creeping up the food chain. Where it'll be the most disruptive, I don't know. I mean, take HR, for example. There are various solutions that try to help offload some of the work from the professional. I honestly don't see and I work with HR, I don't see a replacement for the human judgment and the human touch here. Probably where you'll see it is in the area called robotic process automation, which isn't really AI. It's kind of, it touches the eye from below. It's automating the really mundane stuff of moving forms from here to there. That stuff is disappearing. There's no question about that. How quickly it'll move up the food chain, I hesitate to predict, really. That's the honest answer.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
And one quick explanation about the SRM number, folks. You basically, SRM, once you get the certification, the Society for Human Resource Management, you need to continue taking continuous education programs such as this one. And then you go into your SRM account and you enter this number. But this is not, so if you're not SRM certified, this doesn't really mean much, unfortunately. This is more for the people who are already SRM certified, and then you use that number and then it self-populates. Do you have any questions about that? Please write me privately. I'm going to put my email address in here for everyone in case you want to write me. Other than that, I will be sending this number again. Oops. chris.wildermuth@drake.edu. Other than that, please feel free to contact me. I will be sending everybody this SRM information after the session is over. And I wanted to thank Professor Shoham so much for giving us the gift of your knowledge, and for Olivia to be here. And by the way, as a personal testimonial, you guys have saved me so much time this year. And I love both of those tools. So that's why I invited you to speak today. And also when I heard that Professor Shoham was an expert in AI, I was very excited about that. So thank you everybody for coming.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks everyone, that was a great session. Thank you.